Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everybody around the world. Welcome to this fine Tuesday night Eternal stream. I am Game Grump, joined here by Ilya. Ilya, how you doing this morning?
Doing Gron. Thanks for asking. As usual, well, not as usual, but a good day to have a throne tourney and see what people have been up to in this format that has been kind of on the back burner ever since it had its open. But
Oh
we'll
yeah,
see what people bring today, and hopefully a few spicy meatballs here and there, and from what I can tell from what's been brought, a lot of people said, "Hey, which deck won? Which deck didn't get nerfed?" So let's stick with it. And the most common deck today, Xenon Ramp Reanimator, Xenon Katra, followed
ab-
by Argenport Mid, and then a spattering of 1 and 2 ofs.
absolutely. Huru Control and the Time Justice Primal Aggro. That would be the ABCDEFG deck. The only decks here represented in multiples other than Argenport and Xenon. Everything else is just one of, and even then, both of those copies only have two present among them, but they are a pretty relevant smattering, and we're actually going to be featuring one of them in our feature match here first. So Phoenix, former World Championship competitor Phoenix, piloting the Alessi deck here. You see that list on screen. His opponent for this first round is going to be Colacoma on the aforementioned Portish's winning list. Exact same 80 card deck. Not a single one changed from the looks of it. And for everybody here in the audience, this Cena Reanimator list really just looking to dump big things in the graveyard, reanimate big things from the graveyard through the likes of things like Spore Folk, using stuff like Akaria First Reaper, Severin, or Azendel, close out the game. Hopefully, getting something like a Vera out of the yard to get some multiple reanimation targets. Pretty powerful, obviously, one that last thrown open there. The other deck, the Alessi deck, for anybody who hasn't seen it before, uses stuff like Alessi, Combray Archmage, Brody, Derry, Cathan, and really just looks to close out the game quickly, but does have some tools. For instance, this one's got stuff like Plunk, stuff like Furious Magnaventress that can go a little bit longer. Obviously, stuff in the board like Mystical Shackles, Skycrag Synthesis, just a little bit more controlling tools. I think this is going to be an interesting one.
Played the Reanimator deck on ladder because I do like the archetype. You really need to know what you know. The list is a lot better in open formats because when you know you're against aggro, you know how to mulligan a bit better. Uh, because on ladder, when you don't know, when you have a reasonable keep and you're up against an aggro deck, things can go sideways pretty quickly. But here in an open format, we'll have to see how it does. I do like its chances a bit more here, especially because of that end of an era in the market.
Oh, absolutely. The Reanimator deck gets a lot better with open information, knowing whether or not you need to play around something like a Styre's Eyes, something like an Adjudicator's Gavel, just anything that could really hose your game plan, knowing really which big thing you want to reanimate, because they are not created equal.
Right. Let's head down and see and get the match underway.
Oh, yeah. So we should be starting here very soon.
But in the meantime, in terms of who I like in this matchup, I think the aggro deck with its accesses, with its various abilities to access flying and the synthesis in the market, I do think it's favored. I'm not sure by how much, but it's basically end of an era against Skycrag synthesis and Alasi just getting flying and goldfishing. So
Absolutely agree with that assessment. Probably something like 55-45, 60-40. I wouldn't say it's heavily favored, but I do agree with that assessment. Being able to get early units down and pressure the Reanimator deck is already very good. Having stuff like Skycrag Synthesis to counter their one reanimation target or the end of an era, as you mentioned. And not to mention the fact that, as you kind of touched on, the Reanimator deck really doesn't have a lot of good ways to deal with flying units. And if the Alessi deck gets off the ground and in the air, then could be a very quick game. And looks like we're just taking our
Go.
mulligans now.
And oh boy, colacoma, the dreaded double chairman's contract opener. Get
uh,
that out of here.
it, yeah, although maybe a little cute if we had any source of influence, but not particularly useful when you can't cast your spells.
That's right. So a crust of mystery is going to reveal Bren's insight. Yeah, I like the decision to bottom that.
100%
Turn
here.
two is going to be this Darkwater Vines into a banner into either pass or go for the Shadow Etchings. Okay, so Colacoma elects to burn the Shadow Etchings because of the Crack the Earth in hand
Yeah,
to
and
get,
guaranteed third power next turn.
yeah. So there's that dreaded turn two Dinosaur Nest thing that makes everyone rage. But
Yeah,
it looks like Colacoma is off to a pretty solid start themselves. So this Sporefolk is going to dump 5. This Darkwater Vines is going to dump another 4. And so we see one Shadow Sigil, one Silex, and that's all she wrote as far as power going into the void. Uh,
yeah. And Phoenix in a bit of a rough spot. It's going to need to top deck a power here. No primal influence as of yet, and I can't quite tell, but I believe that's a Combre. So still no
Combre
primal.
painting.
Yes.
Combre painting, but Phoenix still can play for quite a bit. Just drop this Alessi, drop the Brody, I think. And nope. Instead, we are going to see this Twilight Hunt come down on the flyer from Dinosaur Nest, and now there are a pair of 3/3s on the board.
Yeah, I like that play a lot. Buff the 3/3 up to start getting suppression in the air for next turn. The killer is not very high value, but it creates more pressure with your Alessi and also gives you another draw next turn to potentially draw into that primal source for a double accelerated evolution to really close
Hmm.
this game out. And
And there's the chant and the Huru painting. So Phoenix is fully online. However, Coma just had a turn 4 Katra. Luckily for Phoenix, they're able to get that Sporefolk off the board last turn. Otherwise, Katra would have played a third power, which would have meant Icaria immediately, and then
yeah,
all sorts of bad news after that. I have to imagine we Okay, yeah, accelerated evolution on Alessi. I was thinking go for the enforcer, but instead it's Alessi straight to the air and you know
yeah, Brody
get this
coming
game
in.
over with. And oh, there is an undepleted source of shadow, 7th power. It's a duel. Catra gains 2 life. Here's Zakaria, first Reaper. Get that Alessi out of here. And I think this board is pretty much stabilized. Unless the double enforcers can get there. The double enforcers can definitely get there. Uh,
Yeah,
so Colacoma is not out of the woods yet.
yeah, that Magni also a pretty decent pickup against the 11-9 on the ground, but we have enough chump blockers for now, given the Dinosaur Nest and the Brody, who's probably not going to be connecting this game. So being able to silence Ikaria, get another unit in the air here with the Valkyrie Enforcer, plus having your chump blocks ready for the 11-9, not over. Still
Right.
definitely play on
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah. Especially because once that dinosaur nest flips, that's going to be a 5/5 dinosaur, a 3/3 dinosaur, and an enforcer in the air. That is a very quick clock.
Absolutely. 21 here, and chooses the Magni. Dinosaur Nest flipping means Magni would be a 5/6 and demands an answer. Not sure how much I like this compared to the Valkyrie Enforcer, but I do think there's merit to both. I think it is kind of a close decision.
Going for Yeah. So next turn is going to be an accelerated evolution into an enforcer. But okay. So here, I think it's just time to clean up this board. Opponent is tapped out, and just wipe. Get the end of an era, hit that dinosaur nest, wipe out all the small things, That leaves you with Katra and Icaria versus a 3/4 Magna Ventress. And okay, so we're not going to see any waiting for the enforcers. And end of an era just hit the Dizo's office. So the next enforcer coming down is, yeah, it's not looking good for Phoenix. I think Colacoma's deck did just about everything it wanted to, short of dropping Vara. But I have to imagine that unless Phoenix finds a way to end the game this very turn, that Dizo's office is coming down, Nutcatcher swinging in, and it's going to be just too much life to race.
Absolutely. Unless something here like a harsh rule comes out off this tradition chant die, I think this game is about to be over. Even then, Vara potentially coming down in future turns if you just get that one last piece of power. And
Yeah, it's not looking good. Okay, there's the Enforcer. We are silencing the Icaria. The Magnum Ventress attack is free, so might as well get it, but
baiting Accelerated Evolution first probably does choose to do it.
right.
Yep, Tizo's off is coming down.
Yeah,
Lifesteal
and
and
there's the
cut
concession.
ties. Yeah. Not even gonna let the cut ties come through. And
Yeah,
very,
that was pretty decisive.
very decisive. And also kind of the opposite of what we were talking about. Now, there was kind of a slow, awkward start those first couple turns from the Alessi deck, obviously. Not having the double Diplo seal guaranteed them Combray on the second turn. However, obviously couldn't get down any one cost units on that first turn. Had to delay. The primal source being delayed never really ended up mattering that much. Got it just in time for the accelerated evolutions to come down. Uh, but we'll see what happens here. Also, in my opinion, kind of notable, not able to find any market access for that Skycrag synthesis that we were talking about.
When, the synthesis definitely would have mattered because that was end of an era doing end of an era things. Uh, but yeah, I think both decks had a pretty solid draw. I know the TJP aggro deck doesn't normally get a one drop because it's it's only the 4 Cambrai paintings into Alessi that or Brody that are the actual possibilities for a turn 1 play. It's usually turn 2 that things start going when you have something like, I don't know, a Huru banner, a Huru painting into a Diplo seal, or a Cambrai banner, but you have a Derry in hand, and then turn 2 you have the Diplo seal or the Huru painting into Derry plus Twilight Hunt and so on. So it's not that surprising that there's no turn 1 play. It's just I think the Reanimator deck had a slightly better draw. And of course, the turn 4 Katra is, amazing. Uh, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And not saying it was surprising that there was no turn one play, just that in a matchup like this where you need to get out of the gate early as the more aggressive deck, obviously
yeah,
no turn one play does hurt.
yeah.
And
Okay, that is a turn 1
speaking of,
Alessi. Speaking of, okay, so Chairman's Contract is going to trigger this Darkwater Vines. I think there is
there is,
1 power in there.
there's a plunk contract if Phoenix chooses to take it. Obviously does not to get their own plunk down too.
Yeah, for the TJP aggro deck, this isn't about grinding and outdrawing. This is get them dead as soon as possible.
Yes.
Okay,
But
Colacoma scouting in a Zindel, that has to go to the bottom.
yeah, no way that we're keeping that on top right now. Maybe if we had a way to mill it immediately, but not as it stands. And
What
does
was that back on top?
looks like it does choose to top it
Oh, because Bren's
because
insight is going to discard it. Hopefully.
okay.
Okay.
Makes much more sense. I should read the cards.
Okay, so this Dark Water Vines clearly isn't going to be swinging in. It's there to deter Plunk, there to deter Alessi if there's no spells on the way. So
Absolutely. A mirror image, a pretty decent pickup with Alessi on the board.
never, it's always good to mirror an Alessi.
Yeah, make that one a you get 2/3/3s. You can go to your next turn and potentially even buff them even bigger. The Double Tradition chant also very enticing with two Alessis on the board. And Colacoma also this game, things looking a little bit more awkward. Still going to have that turn 5 Patra.
Just how much power is there in the void because this hourglass has been using them as well.
Yeah, I didn't quite get to see on the mills, but I don't remember seeing a lot. Could be wrong. There's one.
Okay, does Katra play any power?
No,
Nope.
no power played by Contra.
Yep, that's just regular vanilla Katra.
Yep. But 7/5 and getting some cards into your void as the reanimator deck, still not entirely bad. Very good at blocking Plunk, obviously, and the Darkwater Vines now can be saved to block the Alessi with that regen.
Okay, Magnum Ventress comes down. Alessi's going to crack in for another 3, but you need a bit more than 3 damage per turn when your opponent's at 7 power. And oh, there's some more bad news for Phoenix. The Karya First Reaper is going to come down. I'm not sure whether we hit the Magnum Ventress or the Alessi. It's the Magnum Ventress. Get that dumb dinosaur out of here. Are we really coming in with the Darkwater Vines? Yeah, I don't think so.
Just wanted to scare him a little bit.
Yeah, Colacoma feeling the momentum a little bit too much there.
Yeah, its hand still a little bit awkward. I have the option to mirror image Alessi and Tradition Chant, but at this point in the game, it's not looking as powerful as it once was. Probably wanted to use
I
that
mean,
mirror image on the Magni to deter some
yeah,
aggression.
okay, roll the dice on the tradition chant. Hopefully that turns something up, but
And
maybe a
has
maybe a vanquish?
Vanquish would not be the worst thing to pick up right now. Kill the Katra. Obviously, there is another Katra coming down next turn if that happens, but
Yeah, maybe at
although
least that Katra is smaller.
much scarier right now, I'm not quite sure if there's power left in Colocoma's Void, but the Arcanum Hourglass playing a power, getting to 8, and then dropping Vara
I
next turn.
don't think there is. I don't think there is. But if there is, this game's just plain over. Okay, so we are mirror imaging the Alessi. Okay.
Mhm. And you were
Yep.
correct. No power left in the void. Double Katra, only one available to be played this turn.
Okay. So okay, Colacoma deciding to get aggressive here. And on defense, it's just Darkwater Vines and a 5-3 for 4.
Those accelerated evolutions actually a fairly big pickup right now.
Pair of 7-7 Alessis in the air.
Yeah, it's going to be a
That's going to
very
put
quick block.
Colacoma in 9.
And they have the life to work with. Could potentially have a lethal angle here over the next 2 turns.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. 14 this turn. Oh, 16
Yep.
this turn. I miscounted.
Yeah, 16 this turn, Plunk to block the 9/7, and then Valkyrie Enforcer to silence the only flying blocker next turn. Even if they didn't have the Valkyrie Enforcer, would still actually come in for lethal right now.
This game, there's no more power for Colacoma to play. He can't gain life from the Katras.
Yeah, no power left in the void, no power in hand. Katra's not going to be able to buff up the life total. The 8 drops are offline, and those ground units are not looking too good at blocking the flyers right now. It looks like Phoenix is going to tie up the series.
Colacoma got a bit too aggressive swinging in with that Ikaria.
Just gonna A space as a last ditch effort, but Plunk there to block means there is no danger of dying right now.
Yep. Just just a bunch of ground units. Sadly, looking up at the pair of 8/8 flying Gillespie's.
Yep. And that's really what we were talking about at the start of the match. Things looked pretty rough there for Phoenix throughout the entirety of those early turns, but the Alessis, the accelerated evolutions, just no good way to deal with big flying units from the Reanimator deck, just really proving enough.
Just that's why we don't swing in with the Icaria against Alessi and potential accelerate evolutions. I mean,
Yeah, just getting a bit too aggressive and overstepping, just misjudging the board state a little bit really cost that game. And it really shows also kind of the tight lines that a lot of these Reanimator matchups, the Alessi matchups, and obviously the Alessi versus Reanimator matchup can really tread two very skill testing decks, honestly, in my opinion. A lot of minor decisions that need to be made.
anime is a lot of minor decisions. It's you're on rails for quite a bit of it, and then you have a few very important decisions to make. And if you get them wrong, you could definitely take a win and turn it into a loss. Or depending on your opponent, you could make a very good decision and pull victory from the jaws of defeat. Okay, so colacoma, 4 power, etchings, no shadow units.
Yeah, not a very quick start, but Arcanum Hourglass could do some work here depending on how the rest of this shapes out. Plunk getting down early is pretty good though, especially with nothing on the board to block him.
Turn power glass with no power in the void.
Yeah, I'm not going to be ramping just yet.
So do we just see aggro enforcer on this turn from Phoenix? I think you have to.
Yeah, choosing instead to
None's
contract pre, I guess just making sure that Magni can come down next turn. The
and it's
Alessi,
going to be rewarded for it by drawing an Alessi.
yeah, very good draw from Phoenix there, allowing to use the power this turn on something other than Tradition Chant.
Hmm. Another hourglass, and okay, we are going to see 3 power into the void. That's that's pretty good. Make that a 4th power.
Yeah, but the other Hourglass able to come down next turn. Vara looking a lot quicker than turn 8 this game.
Yes, but in the meantime, Colacomas still has nothing on the board. All that value is not going to matter much if you're dead.
Absolutely. The Plunk and the Alessi combo, plus the Magnaventris this turn, and the triple spell available next turn for Alessi,
Oh
potentially,
boy,
depending
that's
on
gonna.
what happens here.
Ooh, that is an absolute wonderful pickup for Colacoma. To crack
Abs-
the earth.
Absolutely. Crack the Earth, able to get probably an End of an Era out of the market, potentially a Grasping at Shadows. Didn't quite see everything in the Void, but I do see at least a Severin. Uh,
Yeah. Uh,
although the Fearless
that's
Crescendo.
that is 6 7 from the hourglasses. Next turn, and then the 8th power from hand. And then the question is there something other than the Severin in that void? Because Severin for no piercing griefs. Ooh, Katra.
Katra? Katra is there. Definitely looking good with all the power that we saw dumped into the void earlier. Fearless Crescendo is pretty decent in this spot if Crack the Earth comes down, but 8 power means that Vara can just get around that Skycrack synthesis. Stand Together, though, uh,
Ooh.
I would say probably the better pickup here, given
Yep.
that Vara could come down next turn with 8, and Phoenix obviously being very aware of that.
Just
Choosing
get all the damage.
Yeah, choosing to
Convenient to
preempt
land.
that stand together.
Oh
And
my goodness.
that's just would be lethal if Crack the Earth was not here to create a blocker.
No, it's still lethal.
It is still lethal.
The Nightfall.
The Nightfall trigger. You are correct. This is just lethal with that stand together. And we are going to have our match finished off of a Nightfall trigger. I mentioned the thin margins before, and that's obviously some room to work with here at an effective 30 life. But
Yeah.
the Nightfall lethal, always fun to see.
Just, oh hey, take 17. Through a blocker.
Oh, yeah, and the match, game one, playing out not like we kind of predicted at the start, but game two and three definitely kind of going the way that we said it would at the beginning of all of this. Also, kind of showing the more of the 55, 45, 60, 40 nature that we kind of predicted at the start, showing there's definitely play on both sides. The Reanimator
Mm-hmm.
deck is not lost in the slightest, can definitely do some ridiculous things, take out some games, but just a slight edge to the LSE deck.
Turn that, and that would have gone completely the other way, but such is life.
Absolutely. We'll see if we have any more matches going that we can point you guys toward for some more coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Although, in the meantime, just talk a little bit about the way things are shaping up here. Like we mentioned before, Reanimator, obviously most of the field today. And given that, I think the Alessi deck, given what we've talked about, is a good choice. But we are in to another match here. Looks like it is going to be Reanimator versus Argenport. Argenport, two most represented decks here today. And we are in
So with
game.
a neat innovation, Vikram in the Reanimator deck.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not sure about that.
very interesting here. I th- hmm, I don't know how to feel about that quite yet. I can see the logic. Vikram definitely able to take some stuff from the Reanimator mirror. Seems very good at swinging that one way. If your opponent has an explosive start and you don't, you just take their explosive start. Alternatively, even if you both have explosive starts, stealing a big unit can be a very good way to push through lethal, or stealing a Vara in the mirror. Definitely potentially able to swing some games there.
See what? Now I see. Yeah, okay. Main deck mirror tech. Yeah, and I mean Vikram might also be decent elsewhere, just as a road bump. Uh, because when you're the Reanimator deck, you just need to buy a bunch of time. Uh,
Exactly. You have 4 power and don't have your Katra. That Victorum coming down can really be a huge deterrent to some aggression from the opponent.
hmm. Okay, so looks like there's some sort of void binding going on here.
Yep, I do see a Styre's Eyes in the graveyard, so very likely to be an Adjudicator's Gavel off of that.
I see.
Uh, so that Vara, just a 6/6 right now, especially after being silenced.
Okay, Vikram.
Yeah, another Vikram able to come down. Can take that, what I believe is a Wasteland Broker? Yes. Also
So,
able to get, oh, Subversion of Nature.
so are we stealing the board or are we stealing the hand? Okay, we're stealing the board. Is this
Stealing
lethal?
the board for a lethal attack here as the boxer closes it out with some very hot tech.
Well, okay, then. Subversion of nature in throne.
I I can't say I was expecting that before looking at the deck list, but definitely paying off here. The boxer
Well done.
definitely looks like teching for the mirror that they expected going into this, and obviously, given the decks that we have, a lot of mirrors probably going to be going on today.
And doubt, just take the list that won the Open.
Yeah. Just look at what won the Open. All right, well, let's take that. Let's tech for the mirror, and let's see if I can pick up some wins. We are going into a third backup match, looks like. Jez versus. That'll be Yellow Hands there. Not quite familiar with them, but looks to be a Reanimator mirror, like we just mentioned.
Okay.
Jez also looks to be on the Subversion of Nature, and this is not a lethal attack from Yellow Hands, but I think it's about to be a lethal attack from Jez.
See about that. Unless, does Yellow Hands know what's going on? Are they going to sacrifice Icaria? If they sacrifice Icaria, they win.
Yeah, looks like.
Sacrifice Icaria to the full board. Or that.
Oh, they had an exploit in their hand. That'll do too.
Do it.
And it looks like Yellow Hands is going to take this match, as we do appear to be in game 3 of this one as well. Because without that Subversion of Nature for a lethal with the opponent's board, not looking like a lot. Jez sees the writing on the wall. That is the second Subversion of Nature in the span of 2 minutes.
Thor and Jazz are on the same team, so I have to imagine the lists are very similar,
That
if
makes a
not
lot of sense.
identical.
All right. Yeah, it looks like Boxer and Jez running the exact same 80. And yeah,
The last game of the round. So, see you for round 2 very soon.